past offseason, there were many question marks centered around the Chicago Bears' offensive line after taking a step back in 2019. Whether it be uncertainty at center, tackles Charles Leno and Bobby Massey not being as consistent in pass protection, the retirement of Kyle Long, or a constant theme of missed assignments, there were a multitude of issues plaguing this group up front, and with limited resources to fix all of these problems, concerns did arise that this would be a theme for 2020 as well. Through 2 games, however, this just hasn't been the case. If anything, the offensive line has been a strength for this offense in the early going of the season. This has been mainly seen in a rejuvenated running game, which looks nothing like what we saw in 2019 and even 2018. For reference, in each of Matt Nagy's first 2 years as head coach, the Bears ranked in the bottom 5 of the NFL in Football Outsiders' adjusted line yards metric, which looks at the yards on running plays that can be directly attributed to the blocking of the offensive line. Flash forward to 2020, the Bears currently rank 3rd in this category, a huge improvement. So what exactly has been done that has led to this jump in overall play? For this episode of the Film Room, I take a look back at the tape and go over the schematic and personnel changes that have led to this early success. I'll start with the scheme, as this is a direct reflection of the changes that the Bears made to their offensive coaching staff during the offseason. In order to understand the Bears' current scheme and what changes were made, we first have to understand the scheme that Nagy's Bears ran in 2018 and 2019. Under Harry Hiestand as offensive line coach, the Bears were much more of an inside zone team. This makes sense given Nagy's coaching background in Kansas City. Andy Reid predominantly runs inside zone, so it wasn't surprising to see Nagy adopt this philosophy for his offense. As opposed to the more traditional power gap schemes that emphasize linemen being matched up with the defender to open a specific hole, inside zone has offensive linemen taking a vertical step to the left or right and blocking the first person that enters his area. This basically creates a situation where the defense determines which hole for the running back to go through and opens up many possibilities for cutback lanes, adding a sense of unpredictability to the offense. Unfortunately, the Bears over the past few years just haven't been built properly to run inside zone. Inside zone requires big, strong linemen at the point of attack who can create movement out of their stance. The Bears just didn't have that type of line. While Bobby Massey fits that mold of a power blocker, Charles Leno and James Daniels are athletic finesse blockers in the run game, while Cody Whitehair is more of a technician. This would probably be different had a true mauler such as Kyle Long actually been healthy. However, injuries made him a shell of his former self even when he was on the field. When you factor in some of the other issues with the scheme, such as tight end cutback blocks that always seem to get in the way of running backs, complex pulls that seem to be way too unrealistic, and other concepts that left defensive linemen unblocked in an attempt to trick them with motion in the backfield, it's not surprising to see the Bears struggle on the ground over and over and over again. So what changes did new offensive line coach Juan Castillo and his fellow assistants make to correct this? Simply put, Castillo put a heavy emphasis on outside zone. It should be noted that every single new addition to the coaching staff this offseason has extensive experience working with outside zone. With John DeFilippo and Bill Lazor, each of them worked in Philadelphia under Doug Peterson and Chip Kelly respectively working the scheme. And Castillo, of course, while on the Baltimore Ravens staff in 2014, worked with Gary Kubiak, who along with Mike Shanahan made the outside zone scheme what it is today all the way back in the 90s. So what is outside zone exactly? Outside zone is different from inside zone in that instead of offensive linemen moving vertically, their first step is horizontal, so as to force the defense to move sideline to sideline. This takes advantage of overzealous defenses that either try to shoot gaps or fly to the ball too quickly to open up cutback lanes. Given the Bears' personnel, this is a much better fit for who they have up front. Outside zone takes advantage of Leno's, Daniels, and Whitehair's athleticism when moving horizontally into the second level. This also hides some of their deficiencies with power at the point of attack. Speaking of personnel, we have to talk about the new addition to the Bears offensive line, Jermaine Ifedi at right guard. Brought in from the Seattle Seahawks on a vet minimum contract, Ifedi has seemingly found a home in the interior after years of struggles at right tackle. Now that he is no longer on an island in pass protection and is able to get more help in that regard, Ifedi has been able to focus his attention on what he does best in the run game. Athletic enough to thrive in this outside zone scheme, Ifedi's power has really stood out so far and has added an element that's been missing over the past year or so. A great example of this can be seen here in this play versus the Lions. The Bears are running a trap concept where Daniels pulls to take out the defensive tackle, and Ifedi climbs to the second level to take on the weak side dime backer. Ifedi explodes out of the stance and does a nice job of breaking down to maintain a great angle before using his massive frames to open up the hole for Tariq Cohen to run through, creating an explosive 16-yard run. Switching to his counterpart at the other guard spot, James Daniels has also impressed me quite a bit. We've always known that Daniels possesses elite athleticism, but he has certainly had his issues with handling power at times. During the offseason, it was rumored that Daniels added on about 10 pounds of muscle mass to account for this, and whether that is true or not, it certainly seems like it when watching him. Daniels has been an absolute wrecking ball in the run game. Combined with his outstanding movement skills, it appears that he is set for his best season to date as a pro. I won't go as far as say that he's going to be gunning for a Pro Bowl or even All-Pro selection, but Daniels coming into his own to solidify the interior is a positive development. Again, this shift towards more outside zone is perfect for his skill set, and I'm excited to see his growth going forward. Another development for the Bears running game this season has been the way that they have incorporated their retooled tight end core. It's been harped on a lot, but the Bears' struggles at tight end did more than just negatively impact the passing game. The run game took a sizable hit from a lack of consistent blocking presence at the position, outside of J.P. Holtz occasionally lining up at fullback in 2019. That has changed in 2020, as Nagy has committed to more multi-tight end sets to help supplement the offensive line as a result of improved personnel. For reference, the Bears only ran multi-tight end personnel groupings on 15% of their offensive plays in 2019, according to Sharp Football Stats. So far in 2020, that number is up to 41%. The Bears have been especially good in 12 personnel, where you have one running back, two tight ends, and two wide receivers on the field, averaging 5 yards per carry with a 50% success rate in the run game. If Nagy stays committed to this philosophy, the run game should continue to be a strength all season long. Now, it wouldn't be an offensive line video without mentioning pass protection, which so far has been really good over these past two games. I've tracked how each lineman has performed to start the year, and here is how they compare. So far, the player I've been impressed with the most is Bobby Massey, who I have winning 95% of his pass rush reps to lead the team. Charles Leno at the other tackle spot has looked much closer to his 2018 form, and when you combine that with a very solid interior, the Bears are set up to put Mitchell Trubisky at quarterback in very favorable spots where he'll have plenty of time to go through his reads. Now, it should be noted that the Bears' two opponents, the Lions and Giants, are among the worst pass rushing units in football. Still, this is very promising and something to look forward to if they can maintain their solid level of play. Overall, the early returns on what the Bears set out to do this offseason at offensive line should be looked at as nothing other than glowingly positive. The run game has looked fantastic, and the pass protection is extremely solid right now. If this trend can continue over the next 14 games, I see the Bears offense seeing tremendous improvement as a whole this year, which only bodes well for their playoff hopes going forward.